Hey guys, welcome to this episode of Reality versus Expectations, where I get people from different careers and ask them to write 5 to 10 different cards of what they thought their career would be like versus what it was actually like. On this episode, I have Luli Lee. She has a bachelor's degree in civil engineering from Carnegie Mellon University. She currently works as a civil engineer in Los Angeles, California. With that being said, I hope you guys learned something from this video. Hi, Lily. Thank you for being a guest on Reality versus Expectations. And can you introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Luli Lee. I'm a virtual design and construction slash building information modeling engineer for a general contractor here in downtown LA.
And where did you go to college?
I went to Carnegie Mellon. I got my civil engineering bachelor's there and then started working for a bigger general contractor in Pittsburgh, and then I moved out here to LA to do building information modeling.
Okay, so you said your work is like it's pretty much civil engineering. Would you say it's civil engineering in the industry, or would you say it's like more construction?
I would say it's more construction. So I work for a general contractor. So the way it works is kind of owners get architects to design a building, and then they hire a general contractor to actually build it. And as part of a general contractor, we manage all the subcontractors, such as the mechanical, electrical, plumbing, fire sprinkler trades, so that it all actually physically gets built. So there are building information modeling engineers for subcontractors that specifically deal with models for their trades, but I'm a kind of jack of all trades because I work for a GC, so I manage that whole modeling process for on a global scale.
So you're hired by our builders, or you're hired by architects?
BIM engineers can be hired by any, actually, because of the type of work that we do. For architects, the modeling goes into the design aspect. Yeah, so all the subs and the architects, they do design. Whereas working for GC, we don't really design anything. We work at logistics and like getting things to actually be built. So we're kind of, yeah, so we're a lot of us have civil engineering backgrounds, but we have to know a little bit about everything to make sure that it all kind of fits together.
Okay. What's your first reality versus expectations card?
Okay. Well, my first card is education. So, I think it goes for anybody in the physical engineering that you deal a lot with theories and like soil mechanics, solid mechanics, all of that in school. But when you get out into the real world at work, it's you don't really use any of that. But another thing that I thought was specific to construction was I thought that they would at least put the theories to practical uses, so we would have projects to build specific buildings or like rooms or things like that. But no, it's like they don't even put that into context. When you study structure and stuff, they tell you the beams and the loads and all the physics behind all of that. Doesn't really enter real until you get out into the workforce.
And so you would say you said your company mostly does logistical stuff, but it sounded like you did some virtual modeling. Was that related, or is that not related?
Yeah, so that's something that I do now. Back when I worked for a general contractor before, I was a project engineer, so it was like being on site, and I did a lot of estimating too, which is the pricing side of things. But as the model person, so we basically build it all in 3D in the computer before it actually gets built, and we run clash tests to make sure all the systems fit in the building. There's no conflicting things, and not everything is perfect, but we get it to a point where we're like, yep, we can build this, and then go out and start building it with hammer and tools.
So is that part of your job technical? Would you say it's technical, or would you say it's actually pretty routine?
It's more managerial than anything. The technical part of it is actually really easy. The technical part of it, you learn a couple of pieces of software, you run tests and just analyze the information. So what I do as a VDC engineer, that's why I always say VDC/BIM, because a lot of CAD technicians.
Can you explain the acronyms for the
Oh, sorry. Yeah, so VDC stands for Virtual Design and Construction. BIM stands for Building Information Modeling, and CAD, it's kind of like AutoCAD. So there's different layers of all of this. CAD technicians typically work for subcontractors and actually model like all the pipes and conduit and HVAC ducts, fan coil units, all those things. They design it in a 3D space. Yeah, that could either be a role of a CAD technician, a BIM coordinator, what have you. Then another layer on that, one reason why I call myself a VDC engineer is because since I work for a general contractor, I have to have a little bit of knowledge of all those systems and put it all together and run the clash test. So I don't actually model specific engineering systems. I analyze the data within the models that the subs give me and extract information from there, like whether things will fit or not, like the capacities and what kind of systems that we're working with, see how buildable it is, see where we can save money, where we need more money, whether we're going to be on time because of all these predetermined issues. And if there's any design changes that come up, typically the architect or the designer will give us a revised model, because architects have to plan the space and we just have to make sure all the systems fit in the space as well. So we're like coordinating all of that. So I dissect information more than I model, but then on the pre-construction side, I do a bit of modeling for site logistics so that, we build the 3D representation of the site that we're going to build. But then when it comes to building, you have to think about a lot of different things, like university campuses. You have to think about how you're going to not impact the campus. And so all those fencing areas, scaffolding, we build all that in 3D and show the owner like exactly how we're gonna build a product, and that's where I do most of my modeling.
Okay. What was your next card for reality versus expectations?
My next card was internships. So in construction specifically, one thing that I did not expect, but I learned really quickly, is that GPA really doesn't matter at all. Your experience from internships or fieldwork, that's what's weighed most when getting hired, especially for a general contractor, because I don't think I've ever been asked the technical question in an interview. It's always like, well, what are your previous job experiences? Like, what kind of person are you? They want to know you on a personal level, because you have to deal with so many different people that you have to have some social skills. So with internships, I actually have a lot of experience with internships since I worked for my first GC when I was in high school and when I was 16. And when you're really young, they don't give you that much like real work to do, I guess. It's a lot of paperwork and paper pushing and data entry and stuff like that. But once you graduate that and get out into the field and get to see things being built, that's where you provide the most value, and that's where your education really begins. Like if you shadow a superintendent and just walk the site every day, you kind of get a sense of how things actually get built, from like paper plans to like real 3D stuff, and how exactly concrete is poured, because you as an engineer kind of know why that concrete column would support that slab, but seeing the connections and seeing what it really takes logistically to get all that forms set up, the rebar, concrete, all that, that's where your real education is. So I would recommend internships more than like really focusing on schooling.
So you obviously really enjoy the work if you stayed in it, right?
Yeah.
I guess the general contracting field. I guess what do you like about it so much? What made it say like this is what I want to do for the rest of my life? It's a big deal.
Okay. Well, since I was like in 8th grade, I wanted to be an architect. I really loved buildings and was always fascinated by spaces. So I studied architecture since high school. My high school had majors, so I was an architect major in high school, and then I actually originally went to Carnegie Mellon to pursue an architecture degree, and I did that for 2 years because I was just fascinated by buildings and how things get built and all that stuff. But I quickly learned in school that I wasn't the most creative person. My buildings were pretty square and like not very creative in terms of space planning. So I decided that I'm more of an engineer, like that's just the way my brain is wired. So I switched over to civil engineering, but I never really wanted to design anymore because that's a lot more creativity on the design side. I really cared about how logistically things got built and down to nitty-gritty detail, like the spacing of the nails and studs and all that stuff. So I knew switching from architecture to civil engineering that I would never become like a true civil engineer designer. I was always more drawn towards construction. And I guess what I really like about it is all the people that you get to meet, and like it's a different type of creativity when you have to figure out how things will really work, you know, because a lot of times designers work in like a fantasy world where they have this idea of what they want, and it sounds really great when pitched in a meeting, but figuring out really brick and mortar how you're going to do things, I think that's the type of creativity that I really like.
Okay, what was your next reality versus expectations card?
I guess the technology. So being a BIM engineer, I thought a lot of companies would be up to speed on the type of software and stuff that is used in the industry, but you'd be surprised at how scared like some people are of computers and iPads or even just cell phones. Like I've worked with superintendents who have never touched a computer and now they have to really rely on it because the industry is just moving that way. So that's one thing that I wasn't expecting. So it's also a teaching thing. Like being young, that's generally a common denominator of a lot of BIM engineers. Not all. I've met senior BIM engineers before, but this is relatively new. Like my job title didn't even exist 20 years ago. So a lot of people are pretty new to this, and this is still like we're still developing processes for it, and each company has a different process. So even if you knew how to use a software, you might not know how that company specifically uses it and all of the processes going forward. So that's one thing. And how people are really reluctant to change a lot of times in the field. Like they don't want, our company, everyone gets an iPad so that they can take photos out in the field and stuff, but you'd be surprised at how many people just don't use it and it's just a big paperweight because they don't want to carry it around there. They're afraid to like break it or something.
That's the same thing in mechanical engineering. We were using like CAD software that was easily 10 years old or other modeling software that was like 15 years old. And there's like, when people get old, they don't want to learn new technology. So then they just like refuse to learn it. And then like, what kind of company do? It's like, all right.
Yeah, that's a constant frustration that we always have. But like, there are people who can change. And I firmly believe that BIM is the way to go. Everything will be in 3D, even estimates. Like soon 2D drawings would be obsolete and our desks would be more clear because of it.
Yeah. And so what's your next card?
The next card is, actually it goes back to modeling. So when I first took this job as a VDC engineer, I thought I would be doing a lot more modeling. But it turns out, because I also did internships for an architect, and there I did a lot of different modeling, a lot of different design work, and drawing out plans and 2D and 3D. But I realized that on the general contractor side, you don't really model too much. It goes back to what I said before about how we dissect a lot of information. But on the pre-construction side, we do quite model a lot because we have to show the owner like logistically how we're going to build stuff. So that's the majority of where I model.
When you say modeling, can you describe it? Is it like exactly like CADWorks, SolidWorks modeling, or is it modeling in 2D space? And if so, is it like, because I think when I did modeling, it was different from what I thought modeling would be like as a student. I think it was just like, it's really boring actually when I did it. I did
really mechanical. Fun.
Really?
Yeah, I'm actually sad that I don't get to model more because I find that kind of stuff fun. It's like 3D Play-Doh to me. So, or like 3D Legos. I like doing the modeling stuff. So I guess I've never worked for a subcontractor like modeling, I guess, like electrical systems or HVAC systems before. But what I understand is there's a lot of information there because those CAD drawings and CAD files get sent to the fabricator if they're like LOD 300 or 400, which is like assembly level. So like if it's not to that level of detail, there needs to be a lot of data in it. But for construction, the data that you get from it really comes from the knowledge of the subs and like just logistic layout. So it could be a model could be literally as simple as a block, like in Google SketchUp. Like I've drawn a block and said, hey, this is the building. These are, and then just model all the streets around it and just put a couple of trucks and fences and like arrows just pointing out. That's still a model. You know, and the more level detail that we have, the better, obviously. But sometimes you got to work from nothing. In design build cases where the design is literally being thought of as you're building, you have to get kind of creative on how you represent it to the owner and make sure that he believes that you can build this and you have a solid idea of how this is going to work.
Okay, let's go to the next card. I think we covered that one.
I guess the hours. So okay. In construction, I think a lot of people don't realize the type of hours that it takes. People work really weird hours because there are night shifts, and especially when you get into building for universities. Like a lot of times you'll realize if you've ever done like summer courses, a lot of the construction goes on during the summer when the students aren't really there. A lot of night shifts get pulled because of, pedestrians and noise, and you have to take all of that into consideration. I just never really thought about it when I was in school. And during interviews or like job descriptions on LinkedIn or whatever, they always say like, these are not regular 9 to 5 hours. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's fine. But then, project engineers definitely have it the hardest. Project engineers and superintendents or project managers who are actually out in the field, they have it the hardest because if there's a delay of any kind, you have to pull like 2-3 shifts just to get it all done. And my company specifically, we build a lot of casinos and do a lot of hospitality. And those types of owners are really big sticklers on the end date. And so if you're already running behind schedule, you have to do whatever it takes to get it all done, even if it means, going into the red.
So can you lay out your hours for like an average week, and then can you lay out your hours of like what would be during a bad week?
So I'm actually quite fortunate because when as a project engineer, you would work like a lot of weirder hours. Usually it is very typical for me, at least, like 8 to 5, right? But the field has a lot of needs, and I try to stay late to fulfill those needs, but they have to be there at the crack of dawn. A lot of field work gets started at like 6 a.m., 5 a.m. That's typical. Typical would be like a 6 a.m. and then people get to go home at 5 p.m. unless they have outstanding RFIs or outstanding submittals that they need to submit or just any outstanding issues. But we work with a lot of union workers, so I know that if you're on a union job, they have pretty strict requirements of how many hours they can work, and then if you really try to avoid night work if it's possible for a regular job, because you don't want to spend all the extra money. However, if it's already negotiated in the contract beforehand that you would work night hours, then you just kind of work it out. Like people tag team it,
Questions from the audience. The number one question is, how much do civil engineers make? Like, do you mind stating your starting salary when you first graduated? If you don't, then that's cool. It's totally cool.
It's fine. Like, I'm not sure what civil designers make because, again, I've never worked for a designer. But in construction, GCs make more money than subs. Like, I'm just gonna say that, or that's to my knowledge. So, starting salary, I lived in Pittsburgh, so it's probably a little lower than the national average because living expenses aren't as much in Pittsburgh. So my starting salary was like $55K. But then when I moved to LA to do BIM, my salary went up about like $20K. So yeah, BIM is a really good field to get into right now because people are just all starting to buy into it, like really get into it. And yeah.
Yeah, confirmed. I work for a subcontractor. I did MEP. I was my starting pay was 1750, but it's during trial period. Supposedly it would go up after the trial period, but the firm was really small. It was only like 10 people, and the guy was, well, this is a little bit racist, but sort of own race. He's Chinese, and then he just didn't want to pay very much. It's true. I'm just saying, the guy didn't want to pay anything. I guess the follow-up question to that is, well, how are the job prospects for someone graduating with civil engineering? Would you say it's generally easy to get a job, or would you say it's generally hard to get a job? I guess coming from your Carnegie Mellon experience, and also say if someone didn't go to as good of a school.
One thing, well, I did mention that how the field education is much more important than formal. So I actually found that it hurts some students to go to really good schools, like Harvard, Yale, like those top schools. Like that's not where construction companies really recruit. They recruit a lot more at like state schools or local schools or schools where the CEO went to. Construction has a very big loyalty to their alma mater. So actually all of my jobs and internship experiences were not through Carnegie Mellon. And I think that's one thing that I wish the school had, just more support. And I see that more, like the job fair just for civvies are getting bigger and bigger. But when I was in school, there wasn't that much support. It was literally, if you didn't study software engineering at Carnegie Mellon, there was really nothing else for you. Maybe if you did business and work for Goldman Sachs or whatever. But as a civil engineer, there wasn't that many job prospects in school. I actually thought that it would have been better if I went to like a local school or a state school and just gotten better grades there, because my grades were not very good at Carnegie Mellon. But I think it's generally pretty simple or pretty easy to get a job because general contractors don't expect you to know everything. A lot of things in the field have to be taught. They don't teach you that in school. They don't teach you what an RFI is or that's a request for information, or sometimes they don't even teach you how to read drawings. Like I've had interns who didn't know how to read drawings at all, but they were much higher on the hireability because they already interned before.
Okay. Yeah. What's your next card?
I guess this is my last card. My last card is the people. So in school, you work with a lot of like-minded people, and I thought our projects would be like that would just carry over. But working for a general contractor, you work with so many different types of people. Like the subs who are super technically savvy, but the architects who are very design focused, and just the look of it has to be right. And they're generally much more artistic people. So you have to deal with a lot of different people. And then the superintendents or like the real like old school steam fitters who are very crass and don't give a F about anybody. So it's a lot of managing people and kind of studying people and trying to get them to work together. And at school, I always thought that if I did my job, that would just be the end of it. But coming out into the real world, you realize that it's much more about managing people, because the modeling and the technical part of my job is not that hard. It's pretty easy. It's the managing of people that gets a little difficult sometimes.
Yeah, here's a question. How do you get along with them? I worked in that field, and I feel like a lot of people were assholes.
Yeah, that's true. People.
I'm just saying the truth.
Yeah, but some people are just really laid back, and that's one thing I guess I like about it. The field, there have been times where people get loud and people express themselves in not a very professional way. And that kind of stuff wouldn't fly in an HR department in a regular company like Chase or, Accenture and stuff like that. That just wouldn't fly. But in the field, there's like kind of like a camaraderie, even if like we are yelling at each other and screaming and calling each other all these types of names, the next day we go to work and the slate is kind of wiped clean, so to speak. So because all people really want is to get the job done. So yeah, some people can be racist. Some people can be can be assholes, but there are a lot of really good people too. So nah, good outweighs the bad.
But the next question, and it's a pretty good question, is a lot of people want to move from state to state, especially as they progress in their career. How did you go about getting a job pretty much across the nation? And then to talk about that a little bit.
Oh yeah, definitely. Well, actually, yeah, applying across the state can be a little tricky, especially because you kind of have to take vacation days to go to the interviews and stuff. For me, I was not very happy where I was, just location-wise, because Pittsburgh
What's
wasn't.
wrong with Pittsburgh? Tell me what's wrong.
Nothing is wrong with Pittsburgh. It just wasn't the city for me because I'm originally from New York City. I grew up in a big city. I grew up in Manhattan, and moving to Pittsburgh was just really different. I never lived in such a rural area, and it was not that fun for me. So I knew I had to get back to a big city. So I applied to 60 different jobs, got 10 callbacks, did 5 interviews, and finally settled on one job. It's really just a numbers game. I don't think it was a lack of ability because there's so many jobs. The market actually for BIM is pretty undersaturated. Like everyone in at least my line of work, I feel like we're all overworked because there's just so many projects now going on that especially after the recession of like 2008, 2007, people are just now really starting to build again. So the job market is going up, and it's actually kind of hard to find a good BIM or VDC engineer nowadays because they already have good jobs and they don't want to leave those good jobs. So I know my department is hiring. So yeah, but moving across the state, it's really just a numbers game. You have to find the right company. A lot of companies won't hire across state lines, but a lot of companies will because they just want the best talent. So you just have to keep working at it. I kept an Excel spreadsheet of every single company I applied to and how long they took to reply. And if it passed like a 2-week mark, then I would just mark them in red saying no chance, you know? So I was just very systematic about it. And I just played it like a numbers game.
Oh, I like that. I've never used a spreadsheet before. I kind of just like want to apply, and if they don't contact me, I just want to forget about them if they reject me.
I was like pretty diligent about it. And also working in construction, since you mentioned moving state to state. So I worked for a bigger general contractor when I was in Pittsburgh, and they had jobs all over the country, even some in Puerto Rico. And I know that project engineers, they like the young project engineers with like no families, no kids and stuff like that, because they can place them in different job sites. Since we did so many different jobs all over the country, I know a lot of project engineers were approached to like move to South Carolina or move to Hawaii or move to these different states where big government jobs were being built, because my last contractor that I work with did a lot of government jobs for a long time in jails too. And jails they're usually in like very rural areas, so you know, like they'll pay you more money to go to these areas where there's not that many people, but you get to live like a king basically.
Yeah, it's very typical in engineering, but physical engineering. Same with mechanical. If they send you to like a rural area, it's like they pay you double or a lot more. Mm-hmm. So, and then the next question, which I think we both know the answer to, but we'll just ask it because this is what people want to know all the time. But how much math do you use at your job?
Pretty little. I use geometry more than anything, like just basic shapes and slopes and stuff like that. Not a lot of math.
Yeah, I figured. I mean, I didn't use a lot of math either, and people didn't believe me. I made a video about it, and people still don't believe me. I'm like, all right.
Yeah.
And then I guess the next question was your hardest obstacles as like a college student studying civil engineering, and then your hardest obstacle obstacle that you faced in your career as well.
I think school was a lot harder than like the real world, like the work actually, especially at Carnegie Mellon. The curriculum is really competitive, and they make you work for that degree. And my grades were not very good because I guess I'm just not a classroom type of learner. So that was pretty difficult. And then getting a job from there, that was the easier part, actually. I've consistently had an internship every single summer since I was like 16 until I got a full-time job. So working in construction, there's actually a lot of opportunities, even if it's like something really simple. But I guess the greatest challenge so far was just moving to LA. You know, I have no family here. I didn't know anybody here before I decided to move here. And I had to learn a lot of programs because my company hired me to be this really technically savvy person. But I hadn't touched Revit or AutoCAD for like years. So I had to relearn a lot of that software really early on. I remember the first time I learned how to use Navisworks, which is the clash detection software that we use. I didn't know how to use it, and then within 2 weeks, my boss had me teaching people how to use it. So that was a struggle. That was a struggle, but the technical struggle is really minimal to the social part of it. Because I'm an engineer, and sometimes I can be a little antisocial. So I'm learning how to manage people and things like that. So that's, I guess, the harder part other than school.
Okay, and I think we have 2 more questions. Okay, the next question, and this one comes from one of the audience, is, would you say your job is fun?
I would say my job is pretty fun most of the time because I get to play with all these cool technologies. So I know we talked about how, you know, some of the field is not quite ready for the new technologies that are coming out because Autodesk is making software faster than we can implement them. But some of the stuff is really cool. Like we're getting into virtual reality. My company just bought an Oculus Rift set. So we're going to somehow integrate that into the construction process, maybe make some safety videos or just virtual representation of the space for owners. I have a VR goggle thing at my office here that I get to play around with. And a lot of my job is kind of vetting out softwares. So if a company approaches us saying, you know, you should use this, we kind of just get to play with it, break it, and see how we can implement it in our process. And some of the things are really cool, like laser scanners, all these things that are imperfect right now, but they're kind of the future of construction. So it's cool that I get to be part of that, you know?
Okay, and then the last question is, I guess getting girls or females into STEM is a really big thing right now. Do you feel like being a girl in this field changed your experience, either good or bad? And if so, how so?
Yeah, so what was interesting about Carnegie Mellon's civil engineering program was I thought that the ratio of male to female was pretty equal. It was pretty 50-50. In my graduating class, there's actually more females than males. So I think civil engineering is a growing field for females. And I've always been into like math and science as a kid, but I think you need to start really early to get the grips on them so they can like move it forward. So being a female in construction can definitely be a little difficult because people don't really have a sensor, and there are some companies that don't even have female bathrooms yet because that's just not part of who they are. But you have to kind of be more chill about it. I feel like females sometimes have this pressure to not show emotion because in the field, I know like people get really emotional and like yell and scream. And if it's a male, if it's a project manager yelling why something's off schedule, they're like, okay, he has the right to because, you know, things are delayed or whatever. But then if it's a female, sometimes it's like, oh, she's on her period. So you kind of have to keep your emotions in check more, which yes, it's unfair, but that's just the reality of the situation. So being a female is hard when you think about all of that stuff. But when you get to talk to other female engineers, there's definitely a sense of camaraderie between us because it's not as catty as like, I guess, super corporate jobs where I've heard very bad female to female employee relationships. But I've had nothing but positive experiences from other female engineers, and they're generally pretty supportive of each other.
Okay. And then I guess, okay, I'm just kidding. There's like two more questions. The next question is like best advice you could give to someone that is studying civil engineering right now in college. Besides the cliche, get an internship. Can't say that
Yeah,
one.
get an internship. Like it's just so much more important. Like some of my friends actually delayed applying for jobs because they were worried about finals or midterms. And yeah, that stuff's important because you have to graduate and get good grades and stuff. And I know some companies focus on grades a little bit more than the ones I reached out to, but really there's nothing that can beat field experience, because if you can show in an interview that you know the costs per square foot of typical buildings of core and shell, if you can show that you've managed some subcontractors, if you can show that you can read drawings, which I don't know why that's not a requirement already, like that puts you a leg up more than anything else. And become involved in programs like SWE or ASCE competitions and stuff, because that looks really good too. That gets you connected with the right people. One of my regrets in college is I didn't do those ASCE competitions, even though they looked really fun, like steel bridge or concrete canoe. But those things can really help you, because not only do they look good, it's not about looking good on your resume. That part doesn't really matter. It gets you connected with industry people, because that's where they recruit. I know my company recruits at those competitions and stuff like that. So we want to see the nerds who are really getting involved, who get excited about all that stuff.
Yeah, I actually recommend the same thing. If you're having problems getting your first internship, I recommend doing one of those, because you don't need to interview to participate. You can just join, and then on your resume, it looks pretty much equivalent to an internship if you do compete, especially if you're actually involved. Because when I put it on my resume, they would like pick at it to make sure I wasn't bullshitting. And some parts I bullshit about this rocket thing, but I didn't bullshit about, it's called human powered vehicle competition. I didn't bullshit about that. So I knew everything about that. But that actually helped me a lot, because when I interviewed for jobs, they always asked about that a lot. And then I guess the next question is civil engineering a good major? And if so, what type of person would be best fitted for a civil engineer career?
Oof, okay. I think civil engineering is a great major, because there's so much you can do with it. Like civil engineering is one of the broadest engineering fields taught, because mechanical, electrical, you kind of already know what fields you get into, even though there's a lot of variety within those trades too. But civil encompasses everything. It encompasses buildings, bridges, environmental, like wastewater, like just wastewater treatment plants is a whole other animal from building a nuclear power facility versus building a prison facility. Like there's just so much out there. So I think it's a great major, because it's a really big variety of things, and you can choose, you can pick focuses on what you want to do. Carnegie Mellon didn't really ask for you to make a focus. I know other programs, they do have you focus on something, whether it be structure, whether it be environmental, or what have you. But I like the fact that I got to experience a little bit of everything. I even took transportation engineering, which I hated that, but I at least got to say that I tried it. So I think it's a great major for people who aren't really sure what they want. Like you get a little bit of every type of engineering: mechanical, electrical, like just physics, water treatment, like everything.
So some civil engineers also go into reservoir engineering and petroleum as well. So it's not common, because they can't find enough petroleum engineers, so they'll hire civil engineers to do reservoir type work. Because also a reservoir has to deal with soil and underground stuff. So
soil. Yeah, forgot about that.
Civil engineers have to study that as well. And then okay, so really quick question: yes or no? Can a mechanical engineer get a job in construction?
Oh yeah, totally.
Can he get your job though? He can, right? Like assuming he gets the proper internship. I assume so, because there's a lot of crossover. I do know mechanicals.
That would actually really benefit the company. Actually, having a mechanical engineer doing what I do, that would benefit us a lot.
Okay, and then so what type of personality fits best in civil engineering? Which is a hard question, but the premise of my channel is to make sure people find the right career that's for their personality. Right. And so, what would you say is a good personality fit or attribute fit for someone who is working in civil engineering?
I guess someone who is technically savvy, but not like full full out computer geek that, you know, just doesn't want to interact with people, because you have to interact with people. That's part of the job in construction. So if you love people, if you can, you know, if you have some technical savvy, if you like being outside and just walking the field, and if you like problem solving, I think all of it comes down to is problem solving, because a lot of the problems that come to my desk don't really even deal with the technical part of it. It's really just understanding what the technical people do and speaking in their language of what they should do. So it's a lot of like translating, because you'd be surprised at how many people in the industry don't really know the acronyms either, like, because there's so many. So someone who is tech savvy, friendly, likes to loves people, and just wants to solve the problems, whether it be technical or non.
Okay, I might even edit this out myself, but I have a feeling like sometimes if you're a cute girl, you might have an easier time getting a job than a regular dude in a male-dominated field. I think a lot of girls look at the disadvantage you get being a female in the male-dominated field, but an advantage of it is that sometimes that boss is like, I have 2 qualified candidates, one of them's a dude, one of them's a cute girl. I'm gonna pick the cute girl because we already have like 90 dudes in this place. What do you think about that? Has that ever came up?
That has never come up really in an interview, mostly because I don't think any manager would willingly admit that. But, you know, that's a really practical view on things. Yeah, like maybe if this girl is cute and we don't have any females, we need more females, like that's a thing. But at the same time, you're like, that office is probably so saturated with males. Do you really need another dude? Because that dude probably has a better chance of landing a job somewhere else, you know, because there are plenty of companies that are still in the 19th century about whether females should be in engineering or not. So, you know.
Yeah, that's true.
Plus the pay grade, a lot of times, you know, like as studies show time and time again, females get paid less than males. So I would gladly trade my cuteness for more money.
I don't know about that. Being cute is a pretty good thing. But yeah, thank you so much. And thank you for being a guest. And have a nice Super Bowl Sunday. Bye.
You too. Bye.
And of course, if you are looking for a job and you're a college student or recently graduated from college, check out wayup.com. Wayup.com is a marketplace that's specifically for people with little to no experience. The way they filter out people with experience is that they require you to have a .edu to sign up. I included a link in the top right corner in the card. I also put a link in the description below. Alright, so I hope you guys found that episode of Reality versus Expectations helpful. If you did, give it a like. And I'd like to add that I'm coming out with a book called New Grad Job Hacks. If you're unsure if you want to get this book, I'm actually giving away chapter 1 for free if you click on this link here. And if you want to buy the book, I included a link in the cards in the top right corner. Thank you for checking out this video of Reality versus Expectations. If you want to get more, be sure to subscribe, and I have a whole playlist of these, so be sure to check that out if you want to watch more. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.